Several members have also pointed out another exceptional feature of our budgets this financial year, the draw on past reserves. For most countries, borrowing is the only way to fund their largest stimulus package. This increases the risk of unsustainable debt financing, which has severe consequences for the economy in the long run. Countries that have taken on significant additional debt to pay for their support measures will have to find new ways to repay their debt and interest accrued. Future generations will be required to shoulder this debt in the form of higher taxes, higher inflation, or lower returns on their retirement assets. Future generations will also be affected in other ways. In order to service debt repayment, there will be less fiscal room to invest in human capital or infrastructure. The lockdown generation in these countries will end up paying for this crisis a long way down the road. We are fortunate that in this hour of crisis, we have our national reserves to depend on. Our reserves allow us to deal with this crisis from a position of strength and give us options in a period of uncertainty like this. Our reserves are our rainy day fund. Mr. Vikram Nair likened our reserves to a golden goose, painstakingly built up since our independence. As Ms. Ting Pei Ling and Mr. Murali Pillai have pointed out, our reserves are our key strategic advantage in the current environment. First, it assures Singaporeans that we have the means to navigate the challenges ahead, to protect our lives, and to sustain our livelihoods. Second, it fosters confidence in global investors that our economic fundamentals are sound and stable in the long term, and that we have enough resources to emerge stronger from the crisis. Third, it protects us during this period of flux. Detractors and speculators know well enough not to take advantage of this crisis to attack our economy or currency. We did not get here by chance or good fortune. We have designed and implemented policies that discourage waste or overconsumption. We have run our public service based on outcomes, not on the size of spending. In short, we are in this fortunate position because of consistent hard work, prudence, long-term planning, and discipline of those who came before us. We owe it to our people, seniors, middle-aged, young, and those yet to be born, to be prudent and ensure good governance so that they too have the resources to navigate future challenges in an uncertain world. Fiscal discipline is one of the fundamental principles underpinning Singapore's fiscal system. We spend prudently within our means and responsibly with a value for money culture. The rule is to run balanced budgets for each term of government remains relevant. We also spend equitably with the principle that each generation bears the cost of the benefits that they enjoy. That is why we do not borrow to fund our recurrent spending. Doing so means getting our children to fund our current spending. There will be less resources for our children after repaying such debt. While interest rates may be low now, there is no certainty that we will be able to repay accumulated debt obligations in the future. This is especially so with uncertain economic outlook, where all countries, including Singapore, will be operating in a tighter fiscal space. While we have good reasons not to borrow for our current expenditure, the government is already using debt productively and equitably to generate long-term returns for Singapore. First, the government issues debt securities domestically, for instance, to develop the domestic debt market. The borrowing proceeds are invested and we are able to cover the debt servicing costs through the investment returns. Second, as announced in Budget 2019, the government will guarantee the borrowing by Changi Airports Group to fund the development of Changi East, including Terminal 5. In this way, we leverage the strength of the government's balance sheet to reduce borrowing costs. The debt repayments will be made during a period when the airport will be generating economic returns. Lastly, as I had also mentioned in Budget 2019, the government is considering borrowing for major long-term infrastructure. Long-term infrastructure requires hefty upfront investments and the costs are lumpy. But once built, they benefit many generations of Singaporeans. Borrowing for such development allows us to spread costs equitably across current and future generations without the need for sharp increases in taxes. We have done so in the past. We borrow for many worthwhile investments that have benefited several generations, such as the first terminal at Changi Airport and our first MRT lines. They will continue to generate growth for future generations of Singaporeans. The crisis has underscored the importance of upholding the prudence and discipline of our forefathers to spend responsibly and prepare for the future. This is why, even as we devote considerable resources to overcome the immediate challenges posed by COVID-19, we must continue to plan ahead to secure a fiscally sustainable future. In the medium to long term, our structural needs will persist and significant fiscal outlay will be required. We need to continue investing in healthcare, education and training, and infrastructure, so that we have adequate capacity to take care of our seniors and support an aging population, so that we give every child a good start and give every Singaporean the opportunity to reskill and upskill to access good jobs, and so that Singapore remains a livable city and a place we are proud to call home. These heavy and rising expenditures were known even before the outbreak of COVID-19. COVID-19 has increased the urgency of some of these investments, such as developing advanced medical research and production capabilities and expanding training capacity for our workers. It is hence critical that we deploy the right mix of fiscal instruments that meets our principles of prudence and equitable spending. As I mentioned earlier, major long-term infrastructure spending, which requires hefty upfront investment but benefits many generations of Singaporeans, may be financed through borrowing to fairly distribute the cost among those who benefit. On the other hand, recurrent spending should be met with recurrent revenues. Such spending primarily benefits the current generation of Singaporeans, and so it is fair and responsible for all of us to do our part and chip in. Overall, our taxes and transfers system will remain fair and progressive. With this differentiated and principled fiscal strategy, each generation rightly pays for the benefits that they enjoy, and we do not saddle future generations with our bills. This is an equitable approach and will continue to be the cornerstone of fiscal sustainability for Singapore.